My name is Morgan, and in today's podcast episode, I am going to discuss with you how I navigate my emotional boundaries and trauma triggers when it comes to showing up and being a supportive ally right now in this moment for the people of Palestine, and also as an activist in general in my life. I hope that what I share today could be useful to you, and at the end, I am going to give you 3 ways that you can personally support the people of Palestine, which I have also listed in the description for this episode. But really briefly, those are: do not look away from the suffering of the Palestinian people, pay attention to them and hear their voices. Boycott and divest from companies that fund the Israeli government. And finally, use resistbot or some other way to contact your state representative if you are a United States citizen and demand an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. All the resources for that, once again, are linked in the notes for this episode. Welcome to the Whorrific podcast, a witchcraft and sex work-centered discussion on transforming the systems we hold inside ourselves. My name is Morgan Lafeuille, and I have years of experience as a psychic medium, business consultant, and sex worker. Ready to begin? Just as a note for this episode and every episode, I am not a licensed mental health practitioner. I think that I have a lot of skills when it comes to supporting people in terms of processing difficult feelings, especially when it comes to having an affect and an influence on other people, the people that we're intimate with, the people who cross our paths in our day-to-day lives, and of course the people who we interact with on the internet. This is an area that I'm feeling really called to share about, specifically as it comes to navigating our emotional boundaries and our emotional health as individuals, especially individuals who once again work on the margins, who live on the margins, who maybe are neurotypical, who maybe have a trauma history, who don't always have the same responses as the majority of people. What I would like to say is in regard to the calls on social media for us to, especially as United States citizens, and these calls, by the way, come from Palestine directly, from the Gaza Strip directly, for us as United States citizens to pay attention and to not look away from the atrocity of genocide, mass murder that's being committed currently in front of us. In broad daylight, with media in place, media being made to document to everybody in the world exactly what's happening, which is mass murder and genocide. Obviously, this is a heavy conversation. This is global trauma that we're all experiencing in real time together. And this is something that the internet is doing for us. This is something that's happening because the internet exists, because there is social media, because there are phones, and networks connecting journalists and civilians in Gaza to the rest of us. And that is a new thing, and it's a difficult thing to deal with for many people. And what I have seen as a response to this call from Gaza for us to pay attention, not look away, is one particular response that I've seen a lot that I want to address is the pushback when it comes to needing a mental health break, needing to take care of yourself, not wanting to in any way, jeopardize or interrupt the lifestyle that you have. And I'm trying very, very hard to say this in the nicest way possible because I do have empathy for this situation. It's a situation I have found myself in the past. And the reason why I want to discuss it is because I feel that I have found, at least for me personally, tools and skills and techniques that have supported me in processing these feelings. So the feelings and the responses that I am describing, that I have seen, is the response of, hey everyone, it's okay if you want to take some time off social media to relax, to take care of yourself. It's okay if you want to keep selling, your products, if you want to keep doing your marketing. That's okay. This is a very controversial statement. It's one that I think, taken out of context, I agree with. I do think that it's really important to support your mental health, and I do think it's really important to have a sustainable business practice and to be able to market and advertise yourself so that you can put food on the table. No questions asked. I think what's really important to see here and to witness here is that there is global trauma. There's active colonization taking place. And by colonization, what that includes is violence and genocide and perpetuating trauma. It's what the Israeli state is perpetuating against Palestinian people. The United States has been perpetuating this against its citizens, in particular the indigenous people of North America and the African people who were stolen from their homeland through the transatlantic slave trade. This is an ongoing, perpetual, violent empire that we live under, okay? And that's what I really need to be clear about. To even have the opportunity to choose whether or not you can be online right now and you can connect to this global atrocity is a privilege. And that is really something that I think needs to be acknowledged when it comes to processing these feelings. I am not here to try to make you feel guilty. In fact, what I'm here to do right now is to suggest that guilt, those feelings, if you relate to it, I feel guilty for not posting. I feel guilty for not doing enough. I feel pressured and judged by my community for whether or not I post or what I post, right? I feel like people are making demands of me to do something that I can't possibly do. I can't personally change this situation. All of those feelings are your feelings, okay? They're my feelings, and they are not the result of somebody asking for help in the worst time of their lives. Okay, so that's what I'm really with all of my heart and all of my mental capacity attempting to communicate, is that those feelings of guilt, of resistance, of feeling pushed, of feeling judged, those are all your feelings. They're connected to your personal history, probably including trauma history if you have one. They're connected to your coping mechanisms, okay? It's normal. Especially if you're somebody who has experienced codependency in your lifetime. It's very, very normal to want to push away the deep discomfort that witnessing this trauma brings you, especially in the face of not knowing exactly what you can do to help and not knowing how to help and feeling pushed to do things that may feel inauthentic to you. And so what I'm asking you right now to do is not to take action. Right now. I will do that at the end. But right now what I'm asking you to do is really hold space for those feelings. It seems counterintuitive. It seems like you should suppress those feelings. Like, those are not okay feelings to have. Those are going to distract you from being a good ally. You can't center your own feelings in this moment. For you personally to be a useful and supportive ally in times of global crisis like the ones that we are currently in and are not about to exit anytime soon, you will do yourself and others favors when you release the personal attachment to how your actions look and to how other people are judging them. That is, I think, the biggest thing that I am called to share at this time. I don't know how obvious this is, but as a white person who's been raised and lived my whole life in the United States, I have been fed a lot of propaganda about Israel and Palestine my whole life. And I'm always in an active state when it comes to unlearning that propaganda and unlearning that white supremacy. And so I completely understand the fear of judgment and also just the deep visceral response when these subjects come up. And that is like valid as well. There's a reason why these topics are so triggering to us, not just the current events of like explicit, escalated humanitarian like violence on part of the Israeli government, but the 75 years of context that have led up to it and the 200 years of context that have led up to that of white supremacist colonialism. And that's triggering. It's deeply upsetting, especially for people who, from what I'm told, because I'm white, but for people who racially are part of a marginalized group. And so what I'm suggesting, what I really want to say is that it has really, really helped me as a white person when experiencing, these types of very not okay, unsettling, sickening current events that are white supremacist and colonial explicitly in nature. It has been really, really helpful for me as a white person to take my feelings about it and process them in an intentional and closed container, ideally with a therapist who is trauma-informed and who understands white supremacy. But there's lots of other people that you can do this with, and it's also, frankly, something that you can do on your own. And for me, all it comes down to, and I get that it's counterintuitive, it's why I didn't do it for a long time, but what it comes down to is validating those feelings. Asking yourself, why? Why am I afraid to speak out about this? Why do I feel pressured? Why do these people who I don't know, why are their cries for help and support while they're going through what is objectively the devastation of war and genocide? Why do I take that personally? Why is that something that I feel defensive about? To ask yourself those questions and then sit with the answers. You are a human being. We're all human beings living through this, and what that fundamentally means is that none of us are perfect. And in times like this, what I lean toward is that taking care of my own emotional state, not by logging off or going silent or refusing to engage or remaining neutral, but by processing and feeling my feelings, by allowing myself to respond fully to the triggers so that I can have the strength to participate. Because it's not easy. Anyone can tell you that. That's why there's defensiveness. That's why there's resistance. That's why there's pushback and the need for marketing experts to tell you that it's okay to look away. Because it isn't. And I don't think anyone is asking, not that I've seen. I've looked at a lot of firsthand accounts and calls from Palestinian people that I have found on TikTok that I will link below. And nowhere do I see anyone asking for people with more privilege of them to make themselves sick, to not eat, to not sleep, and to stop taking care of themselves. What I am seeing Palestinian people on social media who have found a way to share their voices is the request that we witness them, that we keep Palestine in our thoughts and in our hearts, and that we do not disconnect from them. And that is necessary both for the human decency and humanitarian, moral, ethical response, but it's also true because part of the genocide against Palestine enacted by Israel is the attempt by Israel to cut off communication from Gaza so that the Western world does not witness and pay attention to and be informed about the atrocities of war and genocide that the Palestinian people are enduring. That is one of the reasons why we are being asked to pay attention, to show up, to share support for Palestine, and not to look away. Their oppressors are actively attempting to silence and put them into a blackout by cutting off their electricity, power, food, and resources. And that is important to understand. It's not to say we should only pay attention to them to prevent a media blackout. We need to pay attention to them because they're human beings who are being put through something that no human being should ever be put through. And we know about it. And when we take care of ourselves, when we understand what our triggers are, what our boundaries need to be in this situation so that we can put our best and most useful, sustainable efforts forward. In order to do that, we need to be processing these feelings. And we need to be processing them in ways that are responsible, intentional, and ways that are supportive and safe and conscientious of the other people around you who are also triggered, unless they're completely ignoring the situation, who are also going through trauma responses. It's a very normal response to this type of global atrocity, this type of genocidal warfare, ongoing and current. It's a normal response. And so if we have the opportunity, the privilege, I would say, of knowing and of seeing where our emotions and our coping mechanisms and our identities and the matrix of thoughts and beliefs that make up our reality, to see where that begins and ends, so that we don't put it out into the world, put it out into other people who are grieving, who are processing this for themselves and who may not have the privilege of being able to sit with those feelings. I think to take that privilege and to use it is one of the most important things that I have done in my 5+ years as an activist. And I think it's like one of the most important things that you can do so that you can look back at this time in history and know that you're on the right side, doing your personal best to be an ally to people who are asking for help publicly, within earshot, within eyeshot. We witness Palestine, we see Palestine. And the feelings that that evokes for us is something that we can handle and have control over and have some sort of responsibility to influence. And that feels good. It feels good at the end of the day to have proper boundaries set up so that you can engage and keep your eyes open and keep your eyes on Palestine, right? And I think that that's kind of what a lot of you are looking for. I know it's what I look for. I have had to go through this process. Of course, it's never over. It's a process I went through really, really heavily as well in the spring of 2020 when George Floyd was murdered by the police. And there were global uprisings against white supremacy in the United States. I think a lot of people feel similar feelings of inadequacy, of guilt, right? Especially white people, I'm assuming, as a white person. And I think that the best way and the most useful, supportive, healing, way that I know how to support you in is to show up to those feelings, to honor them, to give yourself the respect of processing them so that you are not bringing that baggage into a social environment that is so dangerous to so many people. And with that, I do have more to say about this, so I think I will do probably a follow-up, because part of my intention with this podcast, and this was really inspired by the podcast that was put out by bimbotheory, Drunk Church. Bimbotheory put out a podcast episode about this and talked about how as content creators, we have a responsibility, if we have a platform, to use that to call for an end to the genocide in Gaza, to call for, I don't know if she said what specifically to call for, but to use our voices to say and to maintain that it's not okay. It's not okay. Occupation of land is not okay. Colonization is not okay. Genocide is not okay. And I appreciated that. It gave me kind of a good framework and a good understanding of how I can sort of show up and use my voice. And I've also noticed a lot of creators using their specific skills and lanes and avenues and niches of what types of skills that they have to support people. And so this is my offering to you. This is a message that I've tried to and maybe successfully have communicated in the past many times when it comes to emotional responsibility, to take accountability, and not by saying sorry, but by literally accounting for, understanding, and working with and validating your feelings so that other people don't have to. And that feels really good because then you can have interactions and engagement with other people, with your community, in a way that's coming from a part of you that isn't triggered, right? Coming from a part of you that's wise and that knows what's going on and that feels called to do something. That feels really good. And, because of that, I'm able to connect to you about this, because of the example set by others and also because of the time that I've taken to sit with my triggers, to bring them up in therapy, to work hard to access therapy so that I can work through this, because I know that I'm going to take some things personally that are not personal. It is human, and it's especially human when you've experienced a lot of trauma and you have not had the opportunity to recover from it, which is why, once again, I want to say this type of work is a privilege that I think that is really beneficial to use in order to undo the systems of oppressive belief that live within us. So with that said, I just got distracted again, but I think I do want to keep talking about this. I do think that, it feels like the right way for me to use my platform at this time. I hope to use this invigoration to have a more sustainable presence, to share more often about the techniques that I'm using to live through these times and to remain available to my allies, right? To the people who I feel committed to supporting and uplifting. In particular, at this time, the people of Palestine, the children of Palestine. I just hope that you do what you need to do so that you can witness and uplift the people of Palestine. With that, I want to share 3 really specific things you can do other than processing with your therapist so that you can make some sort of direct personal impact and effort to support the Palestinian people in their fight for decolonization. So the first thing is, as I discussed in this entire podcast, I will repeat it, showing up, paying attention, especially searching out voices of Palestinian people and voices of people who are living in Gaza right now who are going through genocide. To stay informed, to stay updated, to seek out that information rather than let it come to you. You can give yourself some sort of boundary or daily practice around it or weekly practice around it. I'm not going to tell you what's appropriate for you. That's going to be something you will need to come to on your own. But that is one of the most direct calls from Palestine for help, is to witness, to remember, to share, and to learn about the Palestinian people, to celebrate their humanity. The second thing that you can do is contact your representative in Congress or Senate. I think that your state representatives are one of the most influential ways that you can use your voice if you do have the privilege of, being an American, a United States citizen. Our government is funding Israel. And has been for a long time. And as United States citizens, our voices are the most important when it comes to, what United States politicians are going to do. I'm not saying that we have the same level of influence as corporations or lobbies, and I'm not going to get into all of that right now. I'm not trying to take like a libertarian stance here by saying that we should go to our representatives. I'm saying that this is something we should do in addition to other efforts that I'm outlining, if we can. And one very easy, useful resource that I have been using for this is resistbot. I was introduced to this by Jessica Lanyadoo over at Ghost of a Podcast, who I also recommend for some support, some spiritual support. And resistbot is just a text message, like AI, that you can send a text message to on your phone and say, "Hi, I'm a citizen of this state. I want to complain to this person, and this is what I want to say to them." And they will create the official document that you need to sign to send to your representative for them to pay attention to it. I did get a response from my state representative when I used it, so it definitely works. And I will be continuing to use that resource in particular to contact my state representatives. You can also call them. And there's lots of educational information available at your discretion to guide you in that direction if you feel really called to work in like the political organizing end. And finally, the third thing that I recommend that is a specific way to help the people of Gaza is to participate in targeted boycotts of businesses who fund and support the Israeli government. There is a great resource called the BDS movement, which stands for Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions, and they have a list of specific companies that you can put your efforts into boycotting to just keep that money from going to the state of Israel. And so some of these companies are McDonald's, Coca-Cola, SodaStream, Burger King, and that is a really effective, it may not fundamentally like alter the world when you choose to buy from a company that doesn't support Israel, but it is a tangible way that you can show the powers that be that you're not okay with what's happening and that you will do something about it. And these are all things that I have found to be accessible as a disabled neurodivergent person. So I hope that any of this could be helpful for you. As always, I'm open to feedback. I would love to hear how you experience this, if it was helpful for you, if I missed any marks. And you can do that by contacting me through email. My email is morgan@morganlafeuille.com. And I will link it below, and below I will also link some social media accounts from Palestinian journalists and Palestinian citizens that are good resources for keeping your eye and paying attention to what is continuing to unfold in Palestine. I'll also link the resources that I discussed, including resistbot and the BDS links, and I'll share my contact info, including my email address, if you would like to reach out with any feedback. If you did enjoy this podcast and you would like to support me, a wonderful way to do that would be to just review and maybe leave a written review of this podcast on Apple iTunes. And you can also find me on Patreon, which I will link below as well. Thank you so much. Free Palestine and colonization everywhere, no matter what it takes. This is our opportunity, one among many, many that we've had. But in particular, this is a moment of collective uprising, and those moments are so powerful to witness, to experience, and to be part of. And I hope that you take this opportunity to do what's right by yourself, by your community. And with that, I will leave you. Thank you for listening to the Whorific podcast. If you like Whorific and want to support my work, please subscribe to this podcast and leave a rating and review on whichever platform you are listening. If you would like to get in touch with me, my Instagram, email, and website are linked in the show notes. Take care and stay horrified.